Welcome to the Plant Fit Summit, bringing you the best in plant-based health and fitness. This is Luke and Toby, and today we have Nikki Bravata. Nikki is a registered nurse from the United States with more than 13 years of nursing experience in intensive care and integrative oncology. She has spent 8 years training and practicing in alternative therapies for healing from chronic diseases. We start the conversation with Nikki sharing about how she began her career in health and wellness.
Well, I'm a nurse, conventionally trained, of course, as we all are. Same like our doctors. We all go through, medical school, nursing school. And of course, I went along the traditional journey. I went into intensive care initially. Actually, I really wanted to get some, intensive training. And so I spent 5 years training in the ICU. I started out in Michigan and University of Michigan in a neurologic ICU. It was really like being tossed into the fire. I mean, it was really a great training. And then I moved to Arizona and started there. And I worked throughout different ICUs in Arizona near Phoenix and Scottsdale, and it was really great training. But it came to a point where I didn't even think that I wanted to be a nurse anymore. To be quite honest, I was burnt out. I was on the code team. I responded to all the codes. I was, the one that would be performing CPR, and it got to the point where I was a little bit even just kind of numb about death, and it was this kind of attitude of like, well, another one bites the dust. I mean, we all kind of get to this point. It was actually quite sad when I look back at it. And so I actually stopped working for a little while. I was pregnant and I was having my first daughter, and I, didn't work for about 7 months. But then at that moment, it hit me, and I realized that parenting was much harder than nursing. So I decided I needed to go back. So I started looking for jobs. I knew I didn't want to work in the hospital anymore, particularly in the ICU. So I started looking for jobs in the clinic, and I came across this job for a cancer clinic in Mesa, Arizona. And my grandmother had just passed away from cancer. And so I thought, well, I'm not sure if I really want to do that. That might be really sad for me, but this job kept popping up every time I'd open up my computer. And so I thought, okay, there's something calling me here. I need to go in for this interview. And so I took this interview at a place called an Oasis of Healing in Mesa, Arizona, with Dr. Thomas Lodi. And they came in and they asked me about my lifestyle. And, they asked me like, so what do you think about health? What is health to you? And I was like, well, super healthy. I exercise, and I eat chicken and broccoli every 3 to 4 hours to maintain a lean muscle mass. And so I consider myself pretty healthy. And they said, we're going to give you some videos to watch. So I took these videos home. One was called Eating, and one was called Healing Cancer from the Inside Out. And I watched them on New Year's Eve, actually, as I do, my fun Friday nights. And and I got up off my couch that night, and I dragged my garbage over to my freezer, and I put my hands in there, and I started cleaning shelf by shelf. And I took my daughter's milk. I had listened to my doctor, and I put her on whole milk, as we do, of course. And I opened up the bottle and I dumped it down the drain. And my kid's father at the time said, what are you going to give the baby? And I said, not this. I'm going to bed and I'll figure it out tomorrow. So the next day, I literally dove in. I took every book that I could find on plant-based lifestyle. I watched every movie, and at the time there wasn't very many. This is over 13 years ago now. It was kind of an insane move that I made. I mean, people were telling me that it was child abuse, that I was, raising my kid vegan. It wasn't just me that was changing my lifestyle, I was changing it for my baby too. So I needed to know everything. I interviewed doctors, I interviewed dietitians, I went as far in as you could go to learn everything about this lifestyle. And once I started to see these positive changes in myself, I knew, that we say in the US that the proof is in the pudding. It was in the raw vegan chia pudding, actually, that I knew that this was working for me. My health improved incredibly. My energy soared. I used to fall asleep driving at the wheel home from the ICU. I worked nights. And I would have to put myself to bed at night because I had incredible energy. My acne cleared up for the first time in my life. I loved my skin at that point, and I didn't have to work so hard in the gym. I just had good results, and I had such good results with my daughter too. She was, probably a little bit of a sick baby, I guess. I had a standard American lifestyle when I was pregnant and nursing her. And she started becoming really healthier version of herself too. And then I got pregnant and I had my second daughter, and I was mostly, raw and plant-based when I was pregnant with her and nursing her, and she turned out to be the most, and still is, the most wonderfully healthy baby. And I'm so incredibly grateful for that, to have found an Oasis of Healing, found Dr. Lodi, learned and had him as a mentor for, almost 13 years now. I'm still, working with him sometimes, and having that knowledge at that point in my life, because it, like I said, it was life changing. I mean, I don't know where I would be without having learned about that. And of course, and it's helped me so much as a nurse too in my career, to have really found out how to help people heal from the inside out and to change their lives to prevent things like cancer. And now I'm not working in taking care of cancer patients directly. I work more on the preventative side. And so I have, all the experience and knowledge, well, not all, but, as much from myself as I can to share, more generally about how to stay well and prevent diseases, and I think that is the most powerful tool that I could have.
Wow, amazing, Nikki. What an amazing journey. It sounds like we live very, very parallel lives, indeed. And like you, it's been almost a decade now, and my life has changed. And hence, us being friends really through the summit many years ago. I think it was the very first time you came on the summit. So what an amazing journey, and from ICU nurse to really health optimization and life optimization as well. And I want to kind of pick up on what you said about healing from the inside out and being an ICU nurse and seeing kind of facing death, people at the end of their lives too. I think it's very relevant to where we are right now with COVID. People are worried about ICUs overflowing. And however, there's also the flip side when there's also the narrative about people sharing about how you can boost your immune system to actually prevent being infected, or in the first place, not just from COVID, but from really any lifestyle diseases that plague us today. So maybe we could kind of have a look at and unpack what is the immune system, and potentially how can we actually boost it.
Sure. Yeah, that's really great. Actually, it was really frustrating, working in the ICU and really being limited with the amount of tools that we had to really help people. In fact, as a nurse, we have a standing order to give anybody a fever, Tylenol. If they have a fever over 101.1 Fahrenheit, we have a standing order from our doctor that we can treat them. Now, of course, in certain situations, when things get really hectic or people are getting dehydrated from fevers and things like that, it's a good thing to treat it. But for the most part, this is our innate immune system. We're born with this immune system, that is designed to protect us from early on, from bacteria, from viruses, and even from diseases, of course. And we have another part of our immune system, our learned immune system, our adaptive immune system, that goes in and learns about these viruses and bacteria and can protect us even better. So there's a lot of things that we can do actually to boost, as we want to say, or to enhance both of these parts of our immune system. And I would say one of them I've already shared with you. I mean, it's no secret now, that we know the role that diet plays in enhancing our immune system. And I would say that this is probably the most powerful tool that we have, because it's the thing that we do the most often. We are constantly eating. I'll back up one step, because I think that there's something that's even more important than this that we have to start with and get right, and that's sleeping. So I would say that eating is probably the most important part, but I have to admit that I truly believe that if we sleep well, we might eat well too. Because you know how it is, when you don't sleep well, you wake up, you're a little bit grumpy, you're probably moody, you're not likely to be making the best decisions, and that can even play into the decisions that you make around food. So I have to say that I think that, well, besides making the right decisions, there's a whole host of other things that sleep is really important for the immune system, especially going to bed according to our circadian rhythm. Sleeping by 10, and sleeping for about 8 hours at night. If you're an adult, even longer. If you're a kid, I'm super happy if my kids sleep 10, 11, 12 hours, because they really need that amount of rest to stay well.
While we're actually talking about circadian rhythms as well, I just want to pick up on what you just said where circadian rhythms are concerned. Yeah. So in terms of circadian rhythms, I understand that our body follows a kind of a biological time. We have our own biological time clock that follows the sun. However, there's my understanding is that there's some people who are early birds, and some people who are probably prefer working late into the night. Is that different for different people where circadian rhythms are concerned?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, really, like if we were subject to being humans on this earth, we would probably go to sleep when the sun went down. If we weren't living in, homes with artificial light and having our phones in front of us, so depending on maybe where you're living in the world, you would probably follow that rhythm. When it's dark, we produce more melatonin. Melatonin is made in our pineal gland and helps us to have more restful sleep. There's a lot of things that can interfere with that. One of them being, of course, our magical phones that keep us awake from that artificial blue light. So yes, following that circadian rhythm would be probably when the sun goes down, and then of course when the sun comes up, we would rise, and maybe even a little bit before that if we've already had 8 or 9 hours of sleep. But that is really all of the studies that are done on humans are we find that they require about 8 hours, give or take about 32 minutes either way, of sleep. And again, sleeping in the nighttime is something that's really important as well. And this can easily be, altered by travel and things like that. It's really difficult when you meet people that have to travel for a living, and that's probably limited right now. It's not too many people are traveling, so hopefully people are catching up on their sleep. But sleep can be a really difficult subject, actually. I meet a lot of people that have been having difficult time sleeping through their whole life. I throw these people into a group of people I like to call highly functioning people, because I'm not like that. I don't understand how people really function so well on such little sleep. I need 8 hours, and if I get less than that, I'm a bear. I'm grateful that that I don't have issues sleeping. So sometimes it can be really frustrating as a healthcare provider to help people that have difficulty sleeping. But I mean, this is a whole other subject. We could probably go really far into what are the things that help with good sleep. But again, in terms of our immune system, I just want to highlight that this is an incredibly important part of our health, and something that we should really try to optimize. If you're having difficulty sleeping, really look into it deeply. There's a lot of great resources right now, and a lot of doctors that have really touched more intensely on those aspects of what constitutes a good sleep, how to get a good sleep. And like I said, when you get a better sleep, you're more likely to make better choices around food, being probably the second, or like I said, the first. Maybe it's in tie for the first of health factors that are going to be important for your immunity. And I have to say that it was really working together with cancer patients that showed me the incredible value of this, and just how powerful it is. One of the first things that we would do for our patients when they would come in is put them through a detox. And a lot of times that would mean that they would be going on to a fast. And normally we would recommend that they would do some, alkaline green juices, something like this, or even sometimes water, because our bodies are designed to heal so quickly. If we cut our hand when we're cutting an apple, we know that it's going to heal. Our body goes in and does all that work to heal from the inside out when we get out of our way. So one of the things that can become an issue when we're trying to heal really quickly is when we're feeding all the time, we're eating all the time, because our 70% of our immune system, or even they estimate up to 80%, is in our gut. And when it's working, when it's busy all day long, it's not defending us as well. And so one of the strategies that we see that can be really helpful for the immune system is to decrease the frequency of your meals, either through intermittent fasting or even full fasting, or fasting 1 day a week, or changing the way that you eat. We know that foods that digest really quickly are going to be things like fruits, vegetables, blended smoothies, blended, soups. Having that fiber is also a really important part for the immune system. So even just that small change, if you're someone that's eating a standard American diet and you change to just plant-based foods that have fibers, this is an incredibly important part for our immune system, because we know that those fibers, that's what's feeding the good bacteria that's already in your gut. Now, some people start doing this and they're like, I switched to plant-based food and I feel terrible, I feel gassy, my stomach's upset. And it's true, sometimes it takes a little bit of a transition, when you change your foods, to change the chemistry in your gut and to change the microbiome. But over time, and this can happen really quickly too if you stick with it, uh, something magic happens. Your body starts to respond in such an amazing way because not only are you getting fiber, but you're getting enzymes, antioxidants. I mean, all these micronutrients, again, we could take a really deep dive here into this stuff. I'm sure there's amazing experts on the summit that are sharing about these things too. But just this small change in your diet is another strategy, that can be incredibly helpful in improving your immunity. And the last thing that I want to touch on, there's probably quite a few other things that we know these things are really common, and I think we're going to probably talk about some more later, of course, like avoiding things like smoking and alcohol, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about toxins in a while. But one of the things that I want to touch on that's really hard to avoid is stress. And it's probably the one that we want to, go to the last. We want to, I don't want to say that it's last because it should be right up there with sleep and nutrition, because stress is something that's easier said than done. Just don't worry about it anymore. Just don't think about that, quit your job, do nothing. Impossible, right? Not impossible, but very difficult. And this is one of the things that we find can really hamper the immune function. And even being in the ICU, I mean, this is stressful, being away from family. I feel incredibly bad for a lot of people that are dealing with hospitalizations right now because of COVID, because they can't be with their families, they can't be with their loved ones, they're having financial strain. I mean, now more than ever, we're seeing a great need for understanding what we can do to manage our stress. I think that, besides stress, the toxins and things like that we're going to talk about more, I pretty much summarize, some of the lifestyle factors that we can really focus on that can help to improve the immune function.
Wow, amazing. So what I got here is sleep, fiber, and stress management. And definitely, I would love to kind of get your insight on how we can better manage stress, because I think stress is one of those things that we kind of push aside. And even for me as well, like being a dad of two, trying to balance everything, sleep is something that I'm trying to optimize and trying to manage my stress. So definitely would love some insights there. So I guess you mentioned lifestyle. Lifestyle is key. And I understand that you work at Tanyapura and you take a very holistic look into lifestyle and biomarkers of health. So I mean, people will go to the doctor and maybe just get their blood work done and just see whether their cholesterol, their triglycerides are elevated, and then just use that as a measure of health. So maybe you could unpack, how we could look a little bit deeper.
This is a great question, and I'm glad that you brought this up, because it's true that, conventionally, when we go for our annual checkup, now this stuff is valuable. We would go in and we would check, so our kidney function, liver function, our cholesterol, right? I mean, these are kind of the normal things in our blood counts. And if those numbers come out great, then it's like, great, you're healthy. But if some of those numbers are abnormal, we have to understand that we've probably had this problem for a while. By the time your liver enzymes are elevated, by the time your cholesterol is, showing up abnormal on your test, it's probably been happening for a while, and it's probably due to a lot of these lifestyle factors. So one of the things that I really like is a more in-depth approach to preventative healthcare. Not to say that those markers aren't incredibly valuable. Of course, I think that everybody should have those tests done once a month, check your blood pressure, know what your fasting insulin is. These are great biomarkers to look, your hemoglobin A1C, for early diabetes, these types of things. But the unmentioned things that we usually don't get to with our doctors are things like our sleep, are things like how's your stress? How are your social relationships? How even having a more social life. I love, following the works of the American Board of Lifestyle Medicine. Dr. Dean Ornish has done a great thing pioneering this very comprehensive checkup that does include things like your social bit. Are you smoking? Are you drinking? Those are questions that we very quickly fill out, yes, no, but we really don't even go into how much. And also, like, what is the reason? Why are we consuming alcohol so often? This is probably the first most important thing to get out of our lifestyle. No amount is ever going to be non-toxic. It's always a toxin in our body. And a lot of times we're using it as a way to escape, as a way to relax. But we're not taught about how we can relax and how we can reduce stress simply by learning some breathing techniques, learning meditation. I love living in Thailand. I didn't mention that I'm living in Thailand right now for the last 6 years. And one of the things that's really common here is that they teach meditation in school. My kids are really fortunate. They start every day with time in. They learn different techniques, and it's great to learn different techniques. We can't always rely on one. If you tell somebody to calm down, more than likely they're not going to calm down. It's just going to make them feel more stressed, right? But if we can encourage someone to just breathe, this might be a very good technique. Or a visualization. I mean, there's lots of different ways. When we say meditation, it's not one size fits all. It's great to have a lot of different tools to turn to, because depending on the moment that you're in, you might want to try a different technique. I don't recommend breathing techniques at bedtime, because breathing techniques, taking deep breaths, are actually more associated with wakefulness. So this is a great thing if you're tired and you're working in the middle of the day. Take a few deep breaths. This can increase oxygenation in your body. This can improve your energy levels, but maybe not the best thing to do when you're trying to sleep at 3 a.m. You might go into more of a visualization or something like that. So we learn about people's level of stress. We learn about how they're sleeping. We learn about their level of toxicity by going into not just toxins that they're consuming, but what have they already accumulated. We look into heavy metals, for example, mineral levels. This is something that's really uncommonly diagnosed is mineral deficiency, where a lot of us are deficient in these minerals because we're not getting enough in our diet. We're not eating enough variety of foods. We're not eating enough of the foods that bring us the minerals. We're choosing more processed foods, for example. And then lastly, we're not absorbing enough because maybe there's inflammation in the gut. So we look into those types of factors. And another part of the 360 checkup we call, or our kind of our lifestyle checkup, is fitness. We cannot forget about fitness. I didn't mention that earlier. That was probably one of the big things I left out. One of the most important things in my life. It's one of the things that I really try to adhere to is doing some level of movement every day. And so we look into what is the ability for that person for their movement, because it's not one size fits all. And even the recommendation to just go out and exercise isn't one size fits all either, because people are at different stages and phases in their life. They have certain risks or injuries that you need to keep, in mind, and also certain conditions like, say, adrenal fatigue that may you might not want to do such intense exercise. Maybe something like yoga or swimming is going to be better advised in those types of conditions. So even starting a fitness routine needs to be individualized, needs to really be carefully looked at to find out what is going to help you bring that balance back into your life. And when I say balance, what are we talking about being balanced? I mean, obviously, we want everything to be balanced in our body. Our body loves balance and homeostasis, but I mean hormones and things like that. This is something that's quite overlooked in our conventional checkups. When we talk about cholesterol and these types of things, it's really great, but we never really go into more of that functional workup where we look into hormones, inflammation in the body, like I said, vitamin levels, mineral levels. These are all really important factors for how balanced we are and how well we can keep even our immune function. So taking all of that into consideration, we look really in depth about the person's lifestyle before we even go into what tests and what treatments that they need, because it's so individual. And I like to always recommend to know the value of your values, because the values of your blood test, the values of, what are your parameters, what's going on with your body right now, because it can change from month to month, it can year to year. And we always need to make little adjustments, and we can really optimize someone's health, even if they're quite well. In fact, most of the people that we see are quite well. I work in an athletics facility. We see athletes and these types of things, but there's always something that we can kind of dial in that makes the person a healthier version of themselves. And when we see these people coming back from year to year, we see that they have improved their times in their races, or they're sleeping better, or their libido has improved, and now they're planning a family, and little things like this that make all the difference in how you feel, and that translates also into how you look. Of course, all of us want to look our best. We want to perform our best. We want to be critically thinking and able to be really good at our jobs. And it starts from the inside, so this is really kind of an overview of what in my eyes, a really good health checkup should be.
I wish all health checkups are like that. I mean, that's amazing. You really take a very macro look at growth and health, because every piece is part of the puzzle, from the way you breathe, what you eat, how you deal with your stress, how you sleep. Because I think when I chatted with Dr. Dean Ornish a few years ago for the summit, and he was talking about spirituality and meditation. I was like,
Mm.
that is amazing. A doctor like him talking about the importance of that in terms of health and longevity, and that all plays a part. So there's so much that you said there, the value of your values, and I think that is so important. But I want to pick up on particularly toxicity. I think toxicity is one thing that I know I, having done the test before, a similar test, I know that I had a mild level of heavy metal toxicity,
Mm.
and I know many people may have, or they don't even know that they are suffering from heavy metal toxicity. So in saying that though, what are some of the heavy metals that we're exposed to, and from what you've seen in just the lab results, where do these actually mainly come from?
Yeah, that I actually love this topic because it was one of the things that helped me to really become a healthier version of myself. So I actually had very little knowledge about the impact that heavy metals play. And I want to just preface by saying that uh, it's normal to have heavy metals. I mean, really, like if we want to call it that, we get them from our moms. So we pass them through from birth. Thanks, mom. We pass them to our babies. But we accumulate them in our environment. We accumulate them as we age, and of course, as we are exposed to these types of things. And so, what are heavy metals? They're things in our environment, like you've probably heard of a lot of them: aluminum, lead, mercury, cadmium, arsenic. And there's some that are a little bit more natural in our environment that we can be exposed to that don't necessarily have such health effects. Silver, for example, if you accumulate a lot of silver, your skin might turn blue, but it's maybe not necessarily as harmful of a metal as some of these other big ones that I want to talk about that can have more profound health effects. And one of the reasons that they are such a big issue for us is because they really can interfere with how we absorb our minerals. And not just that, they affect all of our enzyme systems in our body. So all those little chemical reactions that are happening, they have an effect for our immune system. They can interfere with how our brain functions. And of course, the more we get, the more hard it is for our organs to eliminate them as well. So it's kind of this downward spiral that we really, one of the most important things is just being aware, because the first rule to detoxifying from heavy metals is trying to avoid them. So one of the ways, there's a lot of different ways that you can test for heavy metals, and you probably won't find this in a conventional setting. You might want to check with a functional medicine doctor who maybe has some experience in understanding the effect that these heavy metals can have. And by the way, I want to mention that heavy metals are just one of the toxins, that we can be exposed to. Of course, we can go deep into, plastics and these types of things that are also endocrine disruptors, meaning that they disrupt the function of our hormones. But heavy metals is one that I think is really important because, again, even for me, it was something that I had never addressed before. And once I started to really go into not just the heavy metals, but the mineral deficiencies that were happening because of them, my health improved tremendously. I'll give you an example. One of the things that is quite common that we see is high levels of mercury. This is just one example. Mercury is probably one of the ones that I was most shocked by in my system because I didn't understand where I was getting it from. I'd been avoiding, fish for a long time. The recommendation now, I think, for women that are planning on becoming pregnant is to avoid fish for like 5 years because of the levels of mercury in it. Of course, they tell women don't eat tuna fish and these types of things. And the fish that are the most, laden with mercury are going to be the big fish that are eating the little fish. Animals accumulate toxic metals in their body just like we do. We accumulate them in our fat tissue, in our bone, in our brain, pretty much all the tissues in our body. And animals do too. And fish, the big fish that eat the little fish, just happen to have a lot of mercury. But I hadn't been eating these fish, so I was a little bit stumped, like, well, I thought I would detoxify from this by now. But I didn't realize that I was of the generation, and I think probably my age group and older can have a lot of dental amalgam fillings. And I had several. I grew up in Michigan. We drank soda and ate candy. That was kind of our what we did, and cereals and processed and the sugar, And so I had really a lot of dental issues and had some fillings placed when I was young. and they were mercury. And one of the things that happened after I had my first daughter was that I went to the dentist and he said, well, let's get rid of these. They're not very sightly. They're dark, so we can drill into them and take them out and replace them with white ones. And I went, oh, that's a great idea. Let's do that. So we did that. And after that, very short time after that, I had my first go with hypothyroidism. And I couldn't understand like why this was happening. And of course, I just did what, the doctor said, and I went into, take some thyroid replacement and on with it. And so years later, when I, had a hormone imbalance, I couldn't understand why I couldn't get my thyroid back into a normal range. I finally had a doctor here who said, have you ever checked into your heavy metals? And I went, no, I've never looked at that. What do you mean? So we tested and I had a high amount of mercury. And the problem with having high amounts of mercury is that it will block the mineral iodine. And iodine is something that we probably don't even really pay attention to much in our diet because it's found in only very few foods, like, for example, seafood. Now, if you're the Asian population, if you're Japanese and you eat a lot of, sea vegetables, I would say seafood, I want to say sea vegetables, you should be getting plenty of iodine, but a lot of us don't eat those foods. And also they iodize salt, right? Because people were coming up with goiters because they didn't have enough iodine as well. So they started iodizing salt. But most of us are even avoiding those types of salts now. We're switching to things like Celtic sea salt and Himalayan salt and everything, which is fine, but our thyroid still needs iodine. And so I started to address the level of mercury by doing a little bit of chelation, which is a substance that you can take that acts like a magnet. It binds to the heavy metals so that your body can eliminate them. But with that, it can eliminate some minerals too. So you have to do some mineral replacement. And I started taking some iodine replacement. And lo and behold, for the first time, my thyroid started coming back into normal range. So this was something that was an incredible lesson for me in my health, and something I'm passionate about now in teaching people. And also there's many other examples, like lead, for example. Lead is found in a lot of different products, like our hair dye, for example, makeup, lipstick, particularly. Lead can be, actually we see it a lot here in Asia because people ride motorbikes and it's in the brake dust, and so people inhale the lead. And even food, because unfortunately lead can still be used in fuel and aviation. And so depending on where your crops are grown, you might have lead in your food. Lead can interfere with the absorption of magnesium, calcium, these types of things. Cadmium is another one. Cadmium comes in smoke and secondhand smoke. But if you're not a smoker, you're not exposed to secondhand smoke, cadmium may even be found in food. This is the major source from the use of pesticides, unfortunately. And cadmium can interfere with how we absorb zinc. This is incredibly important for you guys because, well, women too, but we need zinc to make our hormone testosterone. So sometimes we'll see guys that just have very low levels of testosterone naturally, and that maybe some other, lifestyle factors like not sleeping and, partying too much or something like this, not exercising enough. But the other thing is having low levels of zinc. And so we can optimize a person's level of zinc and get rid of some of the cadmium. And naturally, guys will start to produce more testosterone, and women too. I don't want to just exclude the girls because we need testosterone too, just a little bit less. So a lot less. Anyway, so these are just some examples. Aluminum is another one that I think is really interesting. It's typically found in underarm deodorant. It's a main active ingredient that helps us from stopping sweating. It's an easy switch. I had high levels of aluminum when I came here because it's hot in Asia. I started using regular deodorant again after years of not using it, and my aluminum was up. And when I stopped using it and I checked again, just from avoiding that one thing, my aluminum came down. Now, of course, we can find aluminum in things like baking powder. Strangely, it is found in baking powder. You can buy aluminum-free baking powder. It's found in aluminum foil even. I had one lady that had sky-high aluminum, and she was like, I cook everything in aluminum foil. So little switches like this, just stop doing it. First rule is stop doing it. The other next thing that you want to do is increase your minerals. Having low levels of minerals in your body makes it easier for your body to absorb heavy metals. And when you get the heavy metals, they sit on the receptors where the minerals should go. And so it's harder for you to absorb the minerals. So again, that kind of downward spiral. So increasing your mineral levels can help to kind of crowd out the heavy metals. And then some really great detoxification efforts, like we can take an infrared sauna. This is another way that we can help reduce heavy metals in our body. This is something I love doing, is taking an infrared sauna. Infrared will help penetrate deeply into the layers of skin to help your sweating, to remove the heavy metals from our skin. Makes sense, right? We put something on our skin, we can absorb it. Our body products, for example, can be full of heavy metals and toxins. We can use our skin to detoxify as well. So this is a case for sweating every day. Get exercise outdoors, turn off your air conditioning, and sweat. And then the other thing is through dietary, reasons, your dietary ways, you can decrease heavy metals by increasing your fibers, increasing certain foods like in the cruciferous vegetable family or in the allium family, like onions and garlic. Cruciferous vegetables would be like broccoli, cauliflower, kale, bok choy. These types of things are high in things like glutathione, these types of substances that are these sulfurous compounds that are going to help us to naturally detoxify from heavy metals. So these are just some of the ways that we can be exposed, and some of the ways that we can detoxify from heavy metals, but is definitely one of these things that we should become more aware of, because we can simply reduce our burden by avoiding those metals.
Oh, Nikki, you got me thinking there, because I've got like 3 mercury fillings right now as we're speaking. So I'm really thinking about that. And yeah, I think I would have, back in the day, I would have thought about just going to any dentist to just get that removed. And my understanding now, at least, is to go to a functional dentist who knows exactly what he's doing to ensure that none of that mercury gets into my gut and my system, because it's a lot worse than keeping it there and just leaving it there for X amount of time. So thank you for that flag. And I think that just a small point that I want to pick up on, you mentioned iodine and hypo or hyperthyroidism. So I understand there are 3 components to actually improving thyroid health, which is fluoride, bromide, and iodine, FBI. So FBI is the term that I always remember. So maybe we could explore that as one small piece, and then I definitely want to go into the mineral deficiency part, and also optimizing mineral absorption. I think that would be a big topic in itself. So maybe just to kind of have a little bit of a talk about what FBI, fluoride, where are they, bromide, and I know you mentioned iodine, but fluoride and bromide.
Yeah, fluoride and bromide. Yep. Well, fluoride, of course, we start from a young age with fluoride, because it's normally something that we get from the dentist in a good go, right? We fluoridate our teeth because this can help with the mineralization of the teeth, as we're told, and using this product. But we also find fluoride in our water. I look at some of the bottles of water now that says it contains minerals and it has fluoride, but we don't need it. It's actually toxic, and it will displace thyroid, or the iodine on our thyroid, on the receptors, which we critically need for the function of the thyroid. And the same goes with bromide. So fluoride, bromide, and the other one, chloride. Chloride can interfere with how iodine is absorbed by the receptors on our thyroid. And so yes, trying to avoid fluoride in just, you can have mineralized water, just try to avoid something that's containing fluoride. And also, you can just buy a natural toothpaste. You can just brush your teeth with a brush and even baking soda, for example, and this will be enough to, remove any food substance or anything, before you go to sleep, and that should be enough. You don't need to necessarily have the fluoride in your toothpaste to have healthy white teeth. And so I would say that's number one, try to avoid that. Bromide is interesting. Bromide we find in baked goods. We find it in things like muffins and cakes and these types of things. And typically, along with that, there's baking powder in there that also contains aluminum. So avoiding those baked goods can really be helpful for bromide. And then chloride is another one. Chlorine in pools, maybe having a saltwater pool system or ozonated pool would be a better option. But chlorine can also be in our water. So having a filter on your, on your water system can be really helpful too. And these 3 things can really sit on the receptors on the thyroid and block how we absorb iodine. And so sometimes we look at thyroid levels and they look normal, or they're in that normal range, but they're not. The person is still feeling sluggish. They're feeling tired. Their hair is falling out. They're losing their eyebrows. They're gaining weight. Their digestion is slow. And we see that their thyroid, we call subclinical hypothyroidism, meaning that they're having symptoms of having low thyroid, but sometimes that comes back in the normal range. And by the way, when you go check your thyroid, like your TSH, your thyroid stimulating hormone, this is quite a wide range. I see this all the time, that people come in and they're like, well, I went and I checked my thyroid and it's normal, it's in the normal range, but it is certainly not optimal. It is the same thing with our sex hormones too. We get people that they look at the reference range for the hormones, or they're not even done at the right time of the month. In a female, in a menstrual cycle for a female that's having her menstrual cycle still, and they get told that they're normal, but they're certainly not optimal. So understanding what is the optimal range for things like thyroid and your hormones can be really important. That was a little bit of a side note on that, but yeah, coming back to the thyroid, this is something that is really, I would say, underdiagnosed, in terms, and so many people are dealing with thyroid issues and afraid to take iodine sometimes because they're told that if they have something like Hashimoto's or something like this, that they can take iodine. So it is true that you should not be, treating yourself, becoming a Google doctor and, going onto the website and ordering yourself these types of things. I've gotten in trouble with that myself. I highly recommend looking for a functional medicine doctor who is trained to look at these numbers, who really can guide you into what you actually need to take, because it's so easy to just have a pharmacy in your cupboard and just be taking some of this and some of this, and oh, I need that for my hair and I need that for my skin, but really, like, we're not even sure if we should be taking these, and you might just have really expensive urine is kind of what I hear people say, because a lot of these things are water soluble. You're going to take them in and you're going to get rid of what you don't need. So it's really good if you can check and have a micronutrient test and find out what you're deficient in before starting out.
Many people spend whether vitamins, minerals, and sometimes it may not actually be being absorbed into the gut, into the system. So maybe we could now go into what mineral deficiencies you've seen and how can we actually overcome them.
Something that I think is really, again, kind of overlooked in terms of healthcare. And of course, there's a lot of people who feel like we should just be able to get everything from our diet. But let's face it, a lot of us eat the same things over and over. We don't get enough variety. And along with that, sometimes we're eating some foods that can create inflammation in the gut. And not just that, but even as we talked about stress can create inflammation in the gut, not getting enough sleep, these types of things. So there's so many things that can interfere with the function of the gut and then of how we would absorb these minerals. And I have to tell you that I hardly ever see people that have optimal mineral levels. This is something that's super uncommon, but it's not hard to fix. And in some cases, it can be very beneficial to use something like a supplement. One of the most common things that I see is magnesium deficiency. That's because magnesium is responsible for some odd, estimated up to 800 functions in the body. And it's quite an important mineral. And things that maybe can deplete it are like overtraining or consuming too much coffee. Coffee will deplete magnesium. And a lot of our foods just aren't rich in these minerals as well, because they're grown in soils that were depleted, that with the minerals have been depleted because of the use of pesticides. And so really trying to find foods that are grown in organic soil can be really helpful, because they probably contain more minerals. And then eating a variety of foods. And the ones that I would recommend the most are going to be plant-based foods. Anything that comes naturally in this earth, grown on a tree, grown in the ground, is going to be containing the most minerals. And of course, along with that is the fiber. And actually, when we consume those types of foods, it's the fibers in there that help us to heal our gut, improve the gut flora. And having a good variety of gut flora is also incredibly helpful in determining how much of our nutrients that we are going to absorb as well. So the gut flora actually is responsible for consuming them and improving the overall function of our gut flora, of how we absorb our minerals. So trying to really put an emphasis on having a variety of plant-based foods would be the first step in ensuring that you're getting the best levels of minerals. One strategy that I really like is smoothies. A lot of people say like, oh, what's best to have smoothies or juices? Have both. If you green juices, not necessarily fruit juices, because when you remove the fiber, then you can really increase the rate at which you're absorbing the sugars in there. Okay, sugars are okay when they come in fruit. A lot of people are worried about eating sugar with fruit. Even in cancer, we would be a little bit cautious with some of our patients about fruit. We would still allow things that are in the lower glycemic end, things like grapefruit or berries are good all the time, lemons, limes, these types of things that maybe aren't as sweet of fruits like bananas and pineapples and these types of things. But even in people that are trying to control their blood sugar, fruits can be really helpful actually, because they contain a lot of fibers and they contain a lot of these minerals. And so this is not something that we should really be afraid of consuming. In fact, we should try to prioritize consuming fruits and consuming vegetables that are in their raw form. It's okay if you cook them too. They're going to lose a little bit of their nutrients, of course, when you cook them, but it's inconsequential. Have a few more pieces of broccoli and you'll make up for what was lost if you enjoy having it cooked. That's okay. But the whole point is just to really prioritize those foods. Your gut will thank you, your mineral levels will improve, and you'll be avoiding a lot of these diseases from just simply having those foods.
So what would you recommend? Is there, any minerals that you mentioned zinc? Is zinc something that people should think about supplementing, or any vitamins and minerals you would recommend for people to supplement with if they're considering supplementation?
Yeah, I would say it's probably important to really think about how you've been eating before really, starting anything out and just guessing. Like I said, I mean, we talk about minerals, but we can also talk about vitamins too. In general, right now for wellness, I'll just share with you what I'm doing. It might be different from what you need, but I will share with you that it's something that I usually try to prioritize is things like vitamin C. Vitamin C is, something that I think is incredibly helpful for the immune system, especially during times of stress. Vitamin C will help block the negative effects of cortisol. So if you are, maybe a little underslept, or you've been working a lot more than usual, or you're feeling more stressed, or even if you're overtraining, sometimes vitamin C can be really helpful too, because when you over exercise, actually that can be another form of stress for your body too. And of course, we can prioritize vitamin C foods, but I also like to have a supplement of vitamin C. And being plant-based for 13 years, I do try to take B12 every once in a while in the methylated form. I like methyl B12 because I am one that has the DNA variant of having a methylation defect. So I take B12 in its methylated form. I also give that to my kids. They've been lifelong plant-based. And in terms of a mineral, I take magnesium. That's it. That's all I'm taking right now. Because actually, I have to admit that I did make some effort in the past after I had my heavy metal test to really pay attention to my mineral levels. They were low when I initially tested. And then when I started to increase, I started drinking green juices every single day. It's something that I've been doing for about 13 years now, but falling off sometimes and not having as much. But I started to prioritize at least having green juice every single day. I like, when I say green juice, I mean a blend of kale, spinach, celery, cucumber, green apple, lemon. This is a very alkaline forming juice, but it also is going to have a lot of the minerals, enzymes, antioxidants, vitamins, and but I don't just do juices. I do green smoothies too. So I love to have smoothies that incorporate different vegetables in there, berries or something that I always put in my smoothies, bananas. I'm lucky because I live in a very tropical place where these things are really easy to find. So I'm usually just trying to find something that if I know an organic vendor here or local vendor, that has fruits that are in season, I try to rotate. If we were living on this earth, naturally, depending on where we're living, we'd probably eat what was local and in season. So trying to rotate your crop, trying to rotate the vegetables that you're having can be really helpful. So I am definitely of the thought process that we should be able to get these things from our food. And when you prioritize doing that, actually, I was amazed at the results. Most of my levels, there's a kind of a dividing line on the test for the minerals on the test, and some of them come on the low side, and then there's a high side. And at first, literally almost all of my minerals were on this low side. Some of them more low than others, like the iodine, for example. I really had to push, to improve that level. But after probably, I would say it was about a year and a half, almost 2 years before I checked again, and they had shifted to most all of them being on the high side. So in that time, yes, because I was dealing with adrenal fatigue and I was dealing with some other, hormone imbalances and stuff, there was things that I was taking, like zinc, for example. But I knew that I needed it. I checked first. So it's very hard for me to say, yeah, just take these things, because you don't know if you need it. And again, if you don't need it, you might just be, your body's going to utilize what it needs and get rid of the rest. So you might just have an expensive iHerb bill at the end of it. So again, my recommendation is get tested. But definitely right now, if you're trying to work on your immune system, I know a lot of people are because of COVID. Again, things like vitamin C, vitamin D can be helpful. Knowing your vitamin D level to begin with is incredibly important. So many people are deficient, and vitamin D is incredibly important for our immune system. I think a lot of people are hearing about that, and zinc, of course, for improving the immune system. But let's not forget about things like mushrooms. I'm taking a really great mushroom complex right now that it can be really helpful. And there's other things like adaptogenic herbs and things like that can be really helpful for the immune system in a roundabout way by supporting the adrenal glands and things like that. But even then, I would say know what you need before starting into it, because it's, not the best strategy to just start taking things, because sometimes you can create imbalances, by taking things that you don't need to. So again, the one thing that you can do at home, if you're not sure, you don't get tested, just focus on your nutrition. This is a really simple step, is try to resist things that come in packages. Maybe they're fortified with some, I don't know, I want to say vitamins and minerals, but they're probably just fortified with chemicals. And so just try to not eat things in packages. If you can't pronounce it, it's probably not a food. And prioritize just fresh foods. Utilize the strategy of having smoothies. Make your juices at home if you can. And one other thing that I like to encourage is, when you're shopping, if there's good, better, and best, if you can prioritize better and best, meaning that if you see it, say like a product or something that's, your usual product, your usual, I don't know, some product that you like, but then there's maybe like let's use pasta, as an example. There's I love the Bertolli brand or whatever of a regular pasta. Well, maybe if there's something that's like a whole grain type of version, or something that is made from quinoa or something like that, then that would be your better option. And maybe the best option is that it's organic and, it's a gluten-free grain, and, probably costs a little bit more to buy that product. But the more that you can prioritize better and best when it comes to your health, when it comes to how you're buying things for yourself, this will help in the long term to improve your health over time.
I love that, Nikki. Good, better, and then best, because sometimes people look at good and then best as such a huge leap of, of course, it's going to cost a lot more, especially where organic is concerned. So I think that's really amazing. You're quite an encyclopedia, Nikki. I think we can literally spend a whole day, and you can literally do a masterclass on this topic of health and wellness. So, we've talked about gut health, we've talked about mineral absorption, we've talked about iodine and hormones as well. So I know right now people watching, depending on where you are in the world, people might be facing quite a fair bit of stress, whether it's news on COVID or just stress in general. Because when we watch the news, it's normally negative, more often than not. So I think maybe you could give Nikki's 101 on maybe stressing less and living more.
Well, I'll make it as stress-free as possible then. I think the most important thing is just tuning in with yourself. I think, especially, I can say in my own experience, being a healthcare provider, being a nurse, being a mom, being in a relationship, of course, we're giving a lot, and and that's even our guys, not just women, but our dads too, right? Or guys like you, Luke, of course, that are always, trying to help educate people and giving a lot to other people. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. Actually, humans were designed for that. We want to help. We want to help other people. But one of the most beautiful lessons I ever learned working with cancer patients and being a nurse for over 20 years now is that one of the most important things that we need to be able to do is to receive. And so as beautiful as it is to give, I mean, so many people want to help. You have to be able to receive too. So, and that means like receive help from yourself, receive help from others. And the more that we can do that and do it in a way that is gracious and, full of gratitude, it's reciprocal. It goes both ways. And so just don't forget to receive love, to receive, the love from yourself, and look into what are your needs and ask for help, because again, people naturally want to help, but they don't know how. So if you need something right now, give it to yourself. Find out what are your needs. What are you needing more than anything right now? Do you just need some fresh air? Do you need a hug? Do you need somebody? I mean, all of us need each other right now. So wherever you can, be willing to give, but also be willing to receive too, because there's something that is beautiful in being able to receive graciously, especially from yourself, and prioritizing yourself and putting your needs first so that you can continue to give to other people too.
Oh my goodness, I love that summary very much, Nikki, especially right now. That's something that I'm focusing on, receiving, because and that's what I did a few days last week when I bought myself a pair of rollerblades and decided to just go rollerblading as I did as a kid, and it was extremely freeing, just to kind of take care and do what makes me happy instead, because as parents, as professionals, we tend to focus on everyone else, but the one person that we should focus a lot more on is ourselves at times. So I very much resonate with that. In saying that though, thank you very much for firstly your friendship, Nikki. I really, really appreciate our friendship over the years, but also all that you've shared today. I think we really learned a lot from all your experience and the amazing work that you're doing, Nikki. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Luke. Thank you for having me again. It was really fun.
Thank you so much for being here. Whether you're sharing the summit, commenting in the forum, or supporting us by owning the summit package, you are making a difference, because the summit just wouldn't be possible without you. This is Luke and Toby signing off, and we'll see you in the next interview.